No Guts, No Galaxy is recorded in front of a live studio audience. This is an adult podcast containing adult language. Consider yourself warned.
Hello again, Mech fans. This is Duncan Fisher, your one-stop shop for everything that matters. And speaking of what matters, today I want to talk to you about why we love battle mechs. Is mankind violent by nature? We certainly seem drawn to it. We are fascinated by it. And in part, it drives the inner sphere's progress and our entertainment alike. But why mechs? Why does mankind love the sound and fury of giant avatars of war, stomping around a battlefield, unleashing hell on whatever attempts to stand in their path? I think I might have an answer to those questions. Deep down, every man and woman has a need. Well, we probably have several needs, but the one I'm talking about is the need to know that, without a doubt, mankind is superior to everything else in the universe, even itself. That may sound a little circular to you scholars out there, but consider this. We have always fought each other, and fighting is about supremacy over others. And nothing towers over a cowed opponent quite like a battle mech. So the next time you watch a mech fight, try to picture yourself as one of the giant metal monsters slugging away at your adversary. And remember that mechs are like big men. Really big men. With lasers. This has been the Duncan Fisher Minute.
The Duncan Fisher Minute is written by David Morton, produced and performed by George Ledoux and Voices in My Head Productions, based on characters created by Ferret Baudouin and George Ledoux. Any similarity to persons living or dead is ridiculous.
You probably thought it was normal, just a little off. The truth is at one time I was, but now I'm a robot.
Hey everyone, Darren aka Bombadil here. Just wanted to again say thank you for all of your support. It is always appreciated and very much essential for our survival. As always, if you have the means, please head on over to our website at NoGutsNoGalaxy.net and make a simple donation, or even click through our Amazon link before you do your online shopping and get us a little kickback that way. And again, if you have any family, friends, or coworkers that you think might be interested in Battletech or MechWarrior, please help spread the word. Today, we have the first of a special 3-part interview with Brian Ekman, creative director at Piranha Games, so please enjoy. You're listening to the Gamecasting Broadcast Network. Live from the Outreach Studios around the world, this is a No Guts, No Galaxy podcast. And now, your host, Phil, a.k.a. Sean Lang.
Welcome to the No Guts, No Galaxy podcast 103. My name is Phil, and I'm your host. Today is February 12th, 2014, and I'm joined by Darren, a.k.a. Bombadil.
Hey, everyone.
And today's co-host, Brandon, a.k.a. Catcherkel.
Hello, everybody.
Jason, a.k.a. The Centurion.
Hello.
And our guest and speaker, Brian Ekman, creative director of Piranha Games. What's going on, Brian? How are you?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's always a pleasure, man. So, quick question before we dive into everything. How are you enjoying the Ember?
Phil is enjoying it quite a lot, just to let you know.
Yeah, it's, he's got character. What can you say? I truly do love a little mech like that who just likes to wreak havoc.
Well, see, that's what I'm wondering is, like, what makes it so just
good?
Did I mean, like, what's special about I mean, obviously the hard points, but aesthetically,
did you anticipate it being so badass? Did you see this coming?
The guys that when they designed it, they were telling me about it, and I'm like, oh, okay. well, I know we have to balance the flamers a little bit. We got to balance the hard points a little bit more, and we got to look at at the construction of it. And I was like, okay, I'll let you roll with it. They're experts like David and Alex and Paul. I mean, this is what they've been doing for 2 years basically, is making these mechs. And I was like, okay, and then when I saw it and I got to play with it, I'm like, oh my. This is going to be fun, and I'm just excited to see Lights back in a fun way with a real piece of character. So yeah,
Hey,
I was expecting it.
Phil, how are you fitting yours? Are you doing mediums and machine guns, or what are people playing with?
Yeah, mediums, machine guns. I've seen AC5s and another combo. I've tried medium pulse and combination. The thing with the Ember, I mean, obviously we're getting off track here before we get into details, but it's interesting because the Spider is actually smaller. The Jenner, I mean, is a decent size too, but the Ember, it's like a little bulldog, right? It's like something that can take a hit and it keeps hitting back, and it's unique to look at the actual physical dimensions of the mech and then compare it to the Commando or the Spider, which are smaller, but yet it just seems like that thing just can take a hit and just keep going. So, I think it's going to be a number one on a lot of people's lists.
I like the hitboxes. It's just easier to spread a little damage a little bit better, I think, than the Jenner.
The arms, being able to absorb yeah.
Whoever did the fine tuning did a wonderful job.
And of course, aesthetically, Flying Debris, you're awesome.
I know that thing. Seriously, I mean, I knew the Firestarter was coming, but I had no idea it was going to look so cool. He did an amazing job. The
canisters, if you will, on the shoulders look really. I was happy with it. And someone actually pointed out, though, Brian, the cockpit area is very, very, very similar to one of the Atlas concept arts as far as the cockpit area. I mean, it's almost identical, which if you look at it from a certain angle and you didn't know, in a screenshot, you'd almost think, oh, it's an Atlas, but it's
Mini-Me Atlas.
Yeah, well, exactly that, a little mini-me Atlas. I think, Alex draws his reference from his previous designs, and he likes to always put in little Easter eggs and like the little canisters and things. That was the first thing I saw. I was like, oh, that's so cool. That totally sells it as this, pyromaniac. So love it. So he's really good at that and pulling forward and pulling designs from other mechs, and kind of that's what brings it together manufacturer wise and lore wise. It's just those subtle little things he does.
All right, well, we got plenty to talk to you about today, so let's go ahead and dive into it. We're gonna sort of look back, and it's been a few months, and we're gonna look towards the future, towards like April. So since we talked to you last time, we've had a few things come out. One of those being the skirmish mode. So with it being implemented and being out there, can we expect to see any more changes to the current game modes, like before new modes are introduced?
Right now, we are watching how they play out. We're watching how skirmish mode is used by the community. It's still the third played mode, so Assault and Conquest are still more played than skirmish at this point. But we'll probably look at tuning the reward system and some of the maybe the time frame, how long the match is, things like that. But right now we're pretty happy with skirmish. We're just watching. It takes a couple months of metrics to see patterns, so we're still waiting for all that data to come in. It's only been it's going to be about 2 months in a week here, so until then we're just going to wait and see.
One of the questions I was going to ask is, do you see a difference in the drop tonnage in that mode compared to the others?
I'd have to look at it. I haven't actually asked that question, but it would probably be broader if I was to expect it, because there's fewer people playing it, so the matchmaker is going to have larger thresholds.
I was going to say, I play on any, so when there's actually quite a few nights where I'll be streaming and all I get is skirmish like 3-4 times in a row. And I feel that's because what people do is they'll choose Assault and Conquest, and boom, then what happens to me?
Yeah, I think the other thing that is happening too is depends on the time of night you play. If you're going to play in Eastern Time prime time, so 9 o'clock-ish, which is about 6 p.m. back home here where we're at, I think you're going to get a little bit more of a core group of players. Same thing at about 12 to 1 p.m. Pacific time, because that's when the Eurozone's on. So kind of there's 2 peak play times we have in our game, and that's when you're going to have the most dedicated players or the most skillful players, and you're probably going to see a change in which modes get played at that point.
One of the things I definitely will hit on when we get to it is a little bit later on the podcast, but in reference to skirmish mode, and then obviously, Jason, what you were just asking was the weight differences. And, obviously if someone's dropping on skirmish and they're pre-made, they may take heavier weight knowing that, right? Because they're queuing for that particular game mode. Whereas me, I play on any, and a lot of the times I try not to, especially if I'm in a pre-made, I just try not to run with 4 assaults. I usually try to, hey, what are you taking? Okay, I'll take a medium if you're taking a heavy or assault. But I definitely think that's important. But we will be covering that later. So, let's hold on to that. But the next question we have is, with the addition of the new game mode, has it affected the player queue buckets? You guys have mentioned each game mode affects, if you add on more, the more buckets there are. Obviously you said this one was added, it's 20%. How does that affect the player queue?
It's always going to affect the player queue to a certain amount. Every time we segregate the player base, it's going to take longer for matchmaking. I haven't seen a ton of issues in our wait times. They haven't seemed to have gone up too much, so that's kind of the good news. But I think, like you said, a lot of people are using any, so really they're just finding matches at a fairly decent clip, similar to before we added skirmish mode. Anybody who just sticks to one mode only and only plays one mode will probably tend to skew higher on their matchmaking times.
Well, along those same lines, either people are doing any, which I do, Phil does, a lot of people I know do any, and there's some people who totally are hard set on assault and conquest. Will there ever be a toggle option so you can pick multiple game modes?
Yeah, we are exploring that, but because we're so close to the launch module, we kind of said, let's hold off on that feature for getting the launch module out and the design of how we want to handle that aspect with that module, which I can talk about a bit later. So we did talk about it, but we're holding off on allowing to select 2 out of 3 kind of thing.
All right, so we're going to be talking about possible other game modes as well, but can you hint towards, we've heard dropship, we've heard attack and offend. Can you give a little bit of detail about future game modes?
Yeah, the next game mode we're going to be working and developing on will be asymmetrical gameplay surrounding the conquest of planets, and that's for community warfare. We're just finishing up. All the design team is currently working on the launch module and writing up all the stories and the details and everything that's necessary for the engineers to finish it. It's been in production for a month and about 2 months now, so we're actually pretty well into it, but there's a lot of, it's just a big component. As soon as they're done that, they're going to be going back over to work on the base concepts and also the game rules for Planetary Assault. So that'll be the next game mode that goes in, but it will be exclusive to the community warfare component of trying to take over planetary assets.
I love the fact, I know, we're getting to that point now where we're starting to talk of, things are starting to actually roll. Oh, it's going to be good.
Well, I know a lot of comp teams, they're already practicing. I mean, them playing in the leagues, they're going to have a, one up on everyone. And then, obviously once community warfare comes, out, I think a lot of people that have, stepped away are going to come back because, it's that epitome of we can make an imprint in the universe and fighting for, planets and fighting for resources and stuff like that. And obviously, I think when we get closer, Brian, we'll definitely be sitting down and or looking. I'm sure there might be a vlog video talking about all the details as far as community warfare go. But I'm definitely looking forward to it. And again, I think, one thing to note as far as the game modes, I'm really looking forward to attack and offend. And I definitely want more details as we get closer to that as far as the nitty and the gritty, if you will. But
and speaking of that, just so people are aware, we will be like Brian basically told us before this interview, he can't go into the details of community warfare. We'll either get Paul on at some point in the near future to talk about some more of the details, or we'll work it out in some way that we can get that information to you.
Yeah, our focus right now, just to clarify that, is just we're focusing on our key goals and our promises to the community, which leads up till April, right? Getting that launch module out. That's a real cornerstone, just like UI 2.0 was a cornerstone for community warfare, so is this launch module. There's a lot of features wrapped up in it that need to be out before we can go on to the next phase. And I really think that, especially the private match aspect, is going to allow those leagues and those guys who are out there trying to be competitive a real opportunity to do so until we get the formal warfare and formal community warfare aspect in.
Oh, I think that's huge. Private matchmaking is going to be huge across the board. Okay, so speaking of UI 2.0, you guys just released it. I want your initial thoughts on, are you happy with the release?
Yeah, I'm happy with what we achieved given the time frame that we've been working under. It's been feels like we've been in 6 months of mud, tough mudding, as they say, right? Getting this thing finished to a point where we could get it out to the community. It's still early. There's still features missing. There's still optimizations and bugs that we have to address. We're crunching those right now. But I was really happy with the general look and the overall reception from the community. It was positive. I think we still have to address our core audience. We have some features coming out soon in the next 60 days that will help. Everybody knows Smurfy's View and things like that. We're starting to add mech details, which is an overview of your mech. There's a lot of little things that we're doing based on the community feedback that was worked into the pipeline earlier into late December based on playtests in November and October. Those are now going to come out and people can enjoy some of the fruitions of their feedback. So all in all, yes, absolutely happy with where we're at. I feel uncorked. It's like all of this stuff's been bottlenecking us. It's finally out. It's all about forward progress now. Every single patch we do is going to be new features, new content, and I'm just really excited. The whole studio is excited right now.
I was going to say, you guys set a date. You said February 4th, this is coming out. I think that was, from my point of view in the community, was very important that you guys actually followed through with that. And you were just talking about there's core features that you feel need to be delivered to the community before you guys move on. I just want to say I think that's really important, especially from the outside looking in. A lot of people have been very critical. Hey, you guys said this was supposed to be out 6 months ago. It's still not out. So now that UI 2.0, to me, I was okay. I was like, I realize this isn't going to come out. It's not going to be fully functional, but it's out. That's a big thing to me. So props to you guys.
Well, I think that's part one, and then part two is what Brian just said regarding the fact that the feedback they got during testing didn't fall on deaf ears, which is a criticism that we heard. That hey, it released and it's kind of in the same form we saw it months ago. So knowing that stuff was taken seriously and will be rolling out in future additions and changes of the UI, I think is good news for people.
Yeah, a lot of stuff we work on is locked in several months beforehand. So we did the PTs in the fall, and we had a schedule of work that had to be completed before we could go back and address that feedback, and that's exactly what we did. In January, we actually worked on a lot of the feedback, which is now going to start coming out to get into players' hands in early March. So it's exciting because, again, that's, to me, forward progress. These are views and features and functionality that did not exist in the previous version, and now we're actually being able to add things that the community's really wanted, and I'm just super happy, super excited to actually be able to do that.
One of the biggest things before we go to the next question is, if someone hasn't noticed this, when you were coming out of a match and or loading into the game, the first load sequence into the mech bay with the old UI, it would take me probably around 30 seconds between each match. And now it's instantaneous. So, when you guys were literally saying there's a lot of back-end stuff that will improve everything, that's actually one of the first things that popped out when I hopped in. Even though I did break the friends chat system, which I guess what was our goal? I mean, wasn't that, I think, our goal from the start?
It was your excuse anyway, yes.
Yeah, it was, hey, send me a friend request. We're trying to break their chat system, and then we sort of broke it. But yeah, definitely the speed increase as far as mech and awesome.
I think breaking the friends list, Phil, for you is an understatement. You just annihilated it.
What was your final tally? You had 1,700 or something like that?
It was above 1,700, yeah.
Yeah.
And basically I was told by Brian Windover, you shouldn't have that many friends anyways. That's not realistic. And I was like, oh, it is what it is.
Acquaintances, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, you broke scale form in a bad way. I'll just tell you that right now.
It was cool. I was like, what is it? Is it scrolling out? It's scrolling out of the box. And of course, yeah. So, all right, Darren, next question.
But real quick, just from a design standpoint, when you're doing something like UI 2.0 and making a huge overhaul, do you ever bring anybody in for like a fresh eyes view? Like, here's a new player, look at this. Does this make sense to you?
Yeah, we do a little bit of that. We have people take a look at the flow and the functionality. The mandate for 2.0 was to make it easier for a player who wasn't familiar with BattleTech to be able to just focus on one thing at a time, right? Yes, it means more clicks, more things to do to get to what you want to do, but every screen is contextual and you're really just doing one thing at a time. The problem is for the expert player, they don't care about looking at their mech. They don't want to see it. They just want to be able to edit everything at once because they want a planner view, right? They want their Excel spreadsheet. That's what they need. And so that was always on our radar, and the thing we wanted to work on after we got that simplification done for the new user.
Well, Jason kind of stole my thunder and kind of asked my next question, which is totally fine. But basically, it was in terms of design, how do you approach both functionality and aesthetics in terms of new players versus veterans? Do you separate those two and put everything through a prism from that perspective when you're designing? How do you deal with that?
Yes and no. It's kind of a yes and no answer. We look at what we're trying to achieve with each screen. What information needs to be conveyed. Then we look at our demographic and go, who's the screen for and how would they use it? And so MechLab obviously is a very complex, extremely complex part of the UI, and it has so many rules, so many conditions, so many pieces of information that you need to convey to a player so that they understand what they're doing. And then on top of that, you have to make it look cool and functional. And so those are, they're in opposition at the best of times when it comes to a new user and an experienced user. So we try to just do our best to make sure that every screen could be viewed, and you'll see this in upcoming versions, can address the needs of both of those demographics as best as possible using one view. And whenever that's not possible, then we offer up different views, as is the case of the Mech overview screen, which is specifically designed for that core player, that experienced player.
Yeah, I was going to say, a lot of, as soon as you hopped in there, and we saw this early in the playtest, on the playtest server, obviously the first thing everyone was like, oh, this, the functionality's not there and stuff. How easy is it to move things around? Is the system modular? Like, if you guys want to move UI elements around, is it easy?
It's not terribly easy. It's a very complex, it's flash driven, and we completely overhauled how the UI works, and a lot of it had to be rewritten inside of CryEngine to make it do what we needed to do. Sean Cove put up a great post, I think in summertime, a Command Share post that kind of described a lot of that work that we were doing. That was a couple of months worth of work just to even be able to work on the UI. It's easier, it's much easier than it used to be, but it's still not something. It's not like a web page where you just change the size of your frame and everything looks different. It still requires quite a bit of tuning and testing. The other thing that a lot of people may or may not realize is the UI has to be built for the lowest common denominator, which unfortunately in our world is 1024 by 768. That's 4:3. That means not widescreen, which means that a lot of the people go, oh, why don't you fill out more details? Why don't you fill out the space more in 1920 by 1080? We can't, because the elements are exactly the same and they all have to fit within that smallest resolution. So we do have to make sacrifices. We are trying to work out a way, though, where information is displayed contextually based on your resolution. So those with bigger resolutions will actually end up with more information. However, the core functionality, the things that you need, all players need to be able to edit their mech, have to fit inside those resolutions. So that's some of the other things, that hurdles we have with the layout and why the layout is the way it is.
720p? Who does that? No.
It's the same thing for website designers. They have to design usually for the lowest common denominator. And it's funny, you always see people like, well, I've got 10 billion by whatever resolution, and this doesn't look. Well, you're like the third person on the planet to have that resolution.
Yeah, when I'm playing at 1440, I'm like, oh my gosh, everyone's like, dude, your mechs are so small. I'm like, it's because I'm playing at 1440, and I realize that's not the norm. I know 1080 is probably, gamers wise, is probably becoming the norm. But wow, I didn't realize it was 720. So yeah, definitely some.
It's actually smaller
information.
than that, though. Yeah, 720 is a good resolution. That's widescreen. I'm talking 1024 by 768. 1024 is 200 pixels smaller width-wise than 720.
The more you know.
So what are the things you've learned from releasing UI 2.0, like moving forward?
I think the biggest thing that is always a surprise, and you can never test this enough, is the impact a live population will have on systems that you build. We had to turn off, for example, dynamic pricing temporarily because we had to hot patch it, and it's going to go out shortly here. We had to turn it off because we were actually DDoSing the clients. So our servers were shutting down clients because they're sending so much information across the wire. Because of the user behavior we hadn't anticipated. And, it's try as hard as we might, there's always something that slips through that you're like, oh, really? And another great example is now that we allow players to see their inventory and you're able to sell off your inventory, which is fantastic, something people have been wanting forever. The inventory queries, like we have these Munin graphs, which basically chart all the services, all the dedicated servers, all the routers, everything in the backend architecture. We just saw this massive spike, and as soon as there's a spike, all these alarm bells go off in the studio. Everybody gets emailed, people are panicking. It's like, what the hell was that? And it was, now that everybody was able to access their inventory, people were querying the database. They were just hammering it, and it was like, holy smokes, we knew this was going to happen, but the scale was incredible. So I think that's the thing we continually learn, and we continually try to improve our processes. Another thing was, like the advanced options that slipped through, that was just a QA miss. Again, just continually trying to improve our processes with each release, and not taking certain things for granted. It's always evolving, and we're not a huge company. Between IGP and us, there's only about 60 people, and it's it's not like we're EA where their test department's 1,000 people. So stuff, that's our focus, and that's always the thing we're trying to improve the most, and the thing that we always kind of get bit by.
Speaking of your size, your employees and so forth, the little video at the end of vlog number 2 with everybody in the room eating the cake, is that pretty much on a day-to-day basis how many people you have in the office?
There's probably about 15 people not in there that you couldn't see. The Mech team is between 45 and 48, depending on what we're doing. We have floaters that move around, but so there's 45 people. I think 50. No, sorry, let me think about that. Live operations is 12, so that's like just people taking care of running the servers. And then there's the Mech and Map team. Map team is about 7, and the Mech creation team is either at 12 right now because we're doing all the clan stuff.
I thought it was awesome to see everybody together like that.
Yeah, most definitely. Putting a face to a lot of people behind the scenes, and hopefully, the vlogs are definitely doing that. Making that connection for a lot of people.
Just real quick, when you mentioned like design and kind of unforeseen consequences and things like that, Brian, do you think you'll utilize test servers moving forward?
Oh, we do. We actually have a whole pipeline that not everybody sees. We go from internal branches, which get tested locally in the studio, to stage, which is to stable, which is online. So that's the first phase, and stable is actually a mirror of our hardware that you guys use in production. Stage is a mirror. Stable is another set of hardware. And so we do go through a pipeline where features are pushed through different states of server design. Once they get to stage, essentially that's where we test anything we can at scale. But the simple reality is when you have hundreds of thousands of players hammering it individually in different ways, in tens of thousands of queries per millisecond. You just can never fully. It's almost impossible to simulate perfectly what a player's going to do.
I was going to say, and even if you do a public test, how many people actually show up to the public test compared to when you push it live? I mean, I'm assuming you don't, the amount of people that come do the public test are those that are, the ones that go over to the forums, the ones that are active on Facebook, the ones that are active on Reddit. I mean, unless, there's some type of in-game messaging saying, hey, public test is live, go check it out. So, I mean, unless they don't, unless they know about it, they're not going to go help, do the public test either. So
I think public tests are awesome. Brian, I'd like to know from you, how have the previous public tests basically performed? Have you been able to learn from them? Is it something you want to do more of in the future? What is the overall public test feeling right now?
They've been very good overall. I mean, we've had a few ones with lower turnouts. The UI2s averaged, 900 to 1,500 users, which gives us a good baseline. So not huge, but definitely enough to give us some metrics and analytics that we can use to tune and tweak certain things. PTS is here to stay, so we will be pushing any major features through the PTS system to make sure that we catch as many of those big balance issues or gameplay bugs as quickly as possible.
Do you think we'll get a longer window of opportunity to experience a test?
It depends. We're trying to do that. There's obviously a resource conflict. I mean, we have to monitor them, and it's our patch schedule. You hear it from people sometimes, the players, and I love them that they want patches all the time, but there's actually quite a lot of cost time-wise to each patch. We can't really speed it up, and patching the test servers is like patching the live operations. We have to prep it, we have to build it. It takes about 6 to 8 hours to make a build. It has to be monitored, it has to be pushed up. The test team at IGP has to sit down and go through and make sure it works. So every PTS is probably a week's worth of work to put up from a variety of different people. So we just have to be careful at managing our resources and how long it's up. Also, we want to make sure we don't take too much of a draw from the population that hasn't, like the live service, like live operations side of things, but it really hasn't been an issue. Our turnouts haven't caused any issues where we've seen people can't matchmake because there's not enough players online, that kind of stuff.
Well, I think something you just said is pretty good to clear up too. I've actually seen comments of, well, why don't they just make a quick change and throw it up on the public test and, just flip the switch and let everyone test it? It's because what you just outlined was it's not just one person. You need a team behind the whole process, which means a schedule. But let's go ahead and move on. I think we've hammered that home. But one thing you were talking about as far as immersion with the skirmish mode, being a sort of realistic battle sense. Cockpit glass. You guys introduced this. Let me just clear this up to the nerd in me. It's actually ferro armor, but it's see-through. It's not really glass.
Translucent. But let me clear this up too. It's also make-believe.
Whatever. Dude. This is the real world, man.
Sick bird.
Just saying. And that concludes part 1 of the interview with Brian Ekman. Look for part 2 tomorrow.
It'd be best if you avoid me, but I know you probably can't. You sense something is wrong with me. You can feel it on my skin, but there is more with it. Maybe I can be closer now, but I don't know how. Please don't remove my metal skin, my metal skin, my metal skin, and the wires within. You probably thought it was normal, just a little off. The truth is, at one time I was, but now I'm a robot. Forever disconnected from you.